Adventist teenagers go to bed before 11 p.m., watch less than 2 hours of TV daily, and eat breakfast regularly at rates that absolutely crush their non-Adventist peers. Today, we're diving into the scientific and biblical foundations behind why Seventh-day Adventist youth show remarkable resilience, health outcomes, and spiritual development compared to broader evangelical trends. You'll discover how unique doctrines like the sanctuary and investigative judgment shape identity, and understand the lifestyle practices creating measurable health advantages. Let me bring in someone who's been tracking these patterns. The data is honestly pretty striking when you look at it. A study in Mexico with 363 adolescents, 202 Adventists, and 161 non-Adventists found that religious affiliation could actually serve as a predictor of healthy behaviors among teenagers.
Wait, a predictor? That's a strong claim. What exactly did they find?
So Adventist adolescents were significantly more likely to watch TV for 2 hours or less per day, have enough sleeping time for 7 hours or more, go to bed early at 11 o'clock or before, and have breakfast compared to non-Adventist adolescents. All of these differences were statistically significant.
Those sound like pretty basic health habits, but I'm guessing there's more to it?
Exactly. The Adventist religion specifically recommends followers adopt a healthy diet, adequate rest, physical activity, sufficient water intake, and non-use of addictive substances like alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. But here's what's fascinating. It also emphasizes fostering faith and hope to give meaning to life.
So it's not just about the physical practices, but the spiritual framework that gives them meaning?
Right. And this shows up in the research. Among Adventist adolescents, sporting activity and hours watching TV were significantly associated with obesity risk and risky eating patterns. But here's the kicker. No relationship was found between lifestyle behaviors and health outcomes in non-Adventist adolescents.
That's wild. So the same behaviors have different impacts depending on religious affiliation?
It suggests that the religious framework creates a context where these behaviors actually matter more for health outcomes. The Adventist Health Study has been exploring these connections since 1974, with over 40 years of research, 96,000 participants, and a $5.5 million NIH grant.
Okay, so we've got the lifestyle piece, but what about the spiritual development side? How do Adventist youth compare to other evangelical kids when it comes to faith formation?
This is where it gets really interesting. Adventist youth are shaped by some pretty unique doctrines that other evangelical denominations don't have. Take the investigative judgment. It's described as a central doctrine in Seventh-day Adventism's theology, but it's also one of the church's most misunderstood doctrines.
Investigative judgment, that sounds intense. What is it exactly?
According to Adventist teaching, it's a pre-Advent judgment that began in 1844 and continues until just before Jesus returns. It's part of a cosmic process involving multiple stages of judgment. The idea is that God is conducting an open, transparent investigation before final judgment takes place.
So, Adventist youth grow up believing they're living during an active heavenly judgment process? That's got to shape how they see themselves and their purpose.
Absolutely. And it's tied to the sanctuary doctrine, which Ellen White said opened to view a complete system of truth, connected and harmonious. The sanctuary is at the heart of the three angels' messages that Adventists see as their core mission.
This is fascinating because most evangelical youth are just told to accept Jesus and that's it. But Adventist kids are getting this whole cosmic narrative about their role in end-time events.
Exactly. And the research shows this creates different outcomes. A study from Zambia found that youth spiritual vitality is characterized by spiritual commitment, meaningful engagement in religious practices, relational connectedness, moral orientation, and a sustained sense of purpose rooted in transcendent belief.
But wait, that same study found problems too, right? Not all Adventist youth are thriving spiritually?
You're right. The Zambia study found that fragmented church cultures, weak adult engagement, secular peer influences, identity dissonance, and a lack of meaningful belonging negatively impacted youth spiritual vitality. So it's not automatic.
That makes sense. So what does work? What creates the resilience we're seeing in the successful cases?
The research suggests vibrant spiritual vitality comes from intergenerational communities that intentionally involve young people in worship, service, and decision-making. It's about holistic, relational, and community-based approaches.
And this connects to spiritual gifts, right? I noticed Adventist youth programs cover a huge range of topics, over 115 different program ideas, including spiritual gifts, identity, career, health.
Yes, and the Adventist understanding of spiritual gifts is pretty comprehensive. According to their fundamental beliefs, God bestows spiritual gifts on all church members to employ in loving ministry for the common good. These include faith, healing, prophecy, teaching, administration, reconciliation, compassion.
So they're not just telling kids, find your spiritual gift someday, they're actively helping them identify and develop these gifts through structured programs?
Right. And the programs use 15 different formats: panel discussions, testimonies, Bible study, games, outdoor activities, debates, skits, musical activities. It's designed to engage different learning styles and personalities.
This is starting to paint a picture of why we might see different outcomes. But let's talk about the broader research. The Value Genesis Project has been tracking Adventist youth for 30 years, right?
The Value Genesis Project is fascinating. It's been a cornerstone in understanding Adventist youth since 1990, with studies in 2000, 2010, and the latest Value Genesis 4 beginning in 2021. They used 209 core survey questions covering personal spirituality, church involvement, family influences, mental health, and lifestyle choices.
209 questions? That's incredibly detailed. What are they trying to understand?
According to the researchers, they want to answer questions like, how are Adventist youth doing in their faith and development, school life, family, and personal growth? And are they doing better or worse than they were 10, 20, or 30 years ago?
And the latest study is adding new areas like online activity, mental well-being, and global awareness. That suggests they're seeing changes in how youth engage with faith and the world.
Exactly. And this connects to broader research on youth spirituality. A Springer study found that adolescence is a sensitive time period for development, and adolescents' lives are shaped by links to influential others and social institutions.
So the social context really matters. But here's what I'm wondering. How does this compare to what we know about religious youth in general? Are these advantages unique to Adventists?
Great question. Research from Springtide Institute surveyed nearly 10,000 young people and found that those with active religious and spiritual lives report greater mental and emotional flourishing. But the key is environments that prioritize connection and belonging.
And young people feel supported when organizations align expectations with tools to achieve them. They want to understand what's expected and be able to talk to trusted adults about questions.
Right. They want to feel supported and guided, not forced. And purpose matters for mental health. Young people want to be part of organizations that help them find meaning.
This is where the Adventist approach seems different. Instead of just saying, have faith, they're providing this elaborate theological framework about cosmic judgment, sanctuary doctrine, and specific lifestyle practices.
And the research on spirituality and mental health shows this matters. A narrative review found that higher spirituality and adaptive religious engagement are generally linked with lower depressive and anxiety symptom severity.
But it also found that negative religious coping and guilt are associated with increased distress. So it's not just about being religious, it's about how that religiosity is structured and experienced.
Exactly. The review concluded that spirituality and religion can function as both protective and risk factors for mental health. It depends on the specific practices and community context.
So what makes the Adventist context more protective? Is it the lifestyle practices, the doctrinal framework, or the community structure?
I think it's the integration of all three. The lifestyle practices aren't just rules, they're connected to a theological understanding of the body as God's temple. The doctrines provide cosmic purpose and meaning, and the community structure supports both through intergenerational mentoring and diverse programming.
And this shows up in measurable outcomes. The Mexican study found that religious affiliation could serve as a predictor of healthy behaviors. That's not just correlation, that's suggesting causation through the religious framework.
Right. And when you look at the Adventist Health Studies findings, improved kidney function with plant-based diets, reduced cardiovascular disease, lower cancer risks, you're seeing the long-term health impacts of these lifestyle patterns established in youth.
But let's be honest about the challenges too. The Zambia study found identity dissonance and lack of meaningful belonging as major issues. How do Adventist communities address these?
The research suggests it requires intentional effort. The Adventist Review noted that some communities have imitated approaches that focus almost exclusively on initial decisions for Christ, with little concern for subsequent spiritual growth and discipleship.
So when they lose that distinctive doctrinal emphasis and just become generic evangelical, they lose the advantages we've been discussing?
That seems to be the pattern. The review noted this has contributed to new members sometimes not being deeply rooted in Adventist faith and easily departing later, as well as various frustrations in church life.
It's like the distinctiveness is actually a feature, not a bug. The unique doctrines and practices create a coherent worldview that supports resilience and health.
And this connects to what sociologists call the life course perspective. Adolescence is when youth gain autonomy from parents and take ownership of their spiritual lives. Having a robust framework during this transition seems crucial.
So when other evangelical youth are just told to have a personal relationship with Jesus, Adventist youth are getting this comprehensive system connecting theology, lifestyle, community, and cosmic purpose.
Right. And the Ellen White study guides show how this is systematically taught, not just as lifeless theory, but as a living force to change life. There's an emphasis on both understanding doctrine and applying it practically.
The quote from the health study testimonial really captures this. Faith and health is a good partnership, and the way people focus on health, diet, and exercise is a new fountain of youth.
And she adds, we have the obligation to learn to be healthy. This study creates awareness of what we're doing and makes us examples for the world. There's this sense of mission and purpose tied to lifestyle choices.
That's so different from the typical evangelical approach where physical health is often seen as separate from spiritual health, or even potentially in competition with it.
Exactly. And when you look at the spiritual gifts teaching, it's not just about individual talents, it's about employing these gifts in loving ministry for the common good of the church and of humanity. Everything is interconnected.
So when you step back from all this research, what's the bigger picture? What can other faith communities learn from these patterns?
I think the key insight is that resilience and health outcomes aren't just about individual choices. They're about having a coherent worldview that integrates physical, spiritual, and social dimensions of life. The Adventist model shows how doctrine, lifestyle, and community can work together.
And it's not just about rules or restrictions. The research shows that when young people understand the purpose behind expectations and have tools to achieve them, they thrive. It's about meaning making, not just rule following.
Right. And the Value Genesis research tracking 30 years of data will help us understand how these patterns are evolving. Are Adventist youth maintaining these advantages as culture changes? That's the crucial question.
Because if the advantages are real and measurable, then other communities might want to understand what creates them. It's not about becoming Adventist, but about learning from what works.
Exactly. The research suggests that environments prioritizing connection, providing clear expectations with tools to achieve them, and helping young people find purpose are what create flourishing. The specific theological content matters less than the structural approach.
Though in the Adventist case, the theological content seems to reinforce the structural approach. The investigative judgment creates urgency, the sanctuary doctrine provides cosmic significance, and the lifestyle practices offer concrete ways to participate.
That's a great point. It's not just that they have structure, it's that their structure is theologically coherent and practically actionable. Young people can see how their daily choices connect to ultimate meaning and purpose.
And that brings us back to those striking statistics from Mexico. Adventist teens going to bed earlier, watching less TV, eating breakfast regularly. These aren't just random health habits, they're expressions of a comprehensive worldview.
Right. And when that worldview is supported by community, reinforced by doctrine, and connected to spiritual gifts and purpose, you get the resilience and health advantages we've been discussing. It's a complete system.
Which explains why religious affiliation can serve as a predictor of healthy behaviors. It's not just correlation, it's causation through a coherent framework that makes those behaviors meaningful and sustainable.
And that's something any faith community could learn from, regardless of their specific theological positions. The question is, how do you create coherent frameworks that integrate belief, practice, and community in ways that support youth flourishing?
That's the real takeaway here. Thanks for joining us on Copilot Podcasts. The next time you hear about religious youth outcomes, remember, it's not just about having faith, it's about how that faith creates meaning, community, and practical guidance for daily life. The Adventist advantage isn't mysterious, it's systematic.